All right, we are back from the grave. We did the stream and things just kind of blew up. So here we go. Hopefully, microphone, you guys hear me and all that. That would be really good. So you are listening to the Gamer Librarian Podcast, the best podcast you can find on this side of the multiverse. I am your host, Adrian, and today I'm talking about the latest Sony State of Play, Alien Season 1, and more. Afterwards, be sure to subscribe to notify when future episodes are released, and show your support by liking and leaving a comment. Thank you for joining. So, a little bit of side content here. Went to a metal show last Saturday, and it was awesome, like absolutely sick. The bands were Black Braid, Lamp of Murmur, Dodge Street, and I missed Maleficent, which we missed the opening act. That was Maleficent, but Black Braid was the show stealer. Like absolutely, they they are a solo band, which is pretty sick. One person. I don't know how they had other people playing their songs or anything like that. I don't know how music works that way, but it was pretty cool. And they brought out like this Native American horn for some of their songs. They're very inspired by that culture. That's where they're from. I believe they're half Mexican, half Native American, just from their wiki page and what I've seen. But they killed. They killed. It was absolutely insane. So if you're seeing them on tour or anything like that, shout them out or something because they're sick. They're really cool. Now, something that we don't necessarily talk about here a lot is politic, things like that. And we have talked about South Park, and South Park has been something that I love a lot. And they had a episode where they feature Sheila Bafowski yelling at Benjamin Netanyahu, and I thought that was insane. Just one of the funniest things. Absolutely, like right there. I feel like that felt in line with what a lot of people want to do and want to say and feel and stuff like that. So I think it's just South Park making fun of the world and how the world is, just like a lot of these other TV shows, and I find that funny. It's just pretty cool. Now, we have some side content to talk about before we get into the Sony State of Play, but a lot of it's video game related type stuff. Maybe if we get closer, the mic might be a little better. We're using the webcam. We've had terrible luck with the microphones lately. So Castlevania has been adapted on Netflix for like 3 or 4 seasons, and I only watched by like middle of season two. But there's like a special DVD collection that you can get with comes like a Ouija board and all kinds of other goodies. But since October's coming around, maybe I'll get into binging the Netflix Castlevania show, and maybe we'll try to play a Castlevania game, depending on some of the other games that are coming out. Because I want to play Chronos, the New Dawn. That's going to be really sick. So Castlevania is definitely up there in terms of shows we want to watch. And Sony has a crossover with Magic the Gathering's Secret Lair. So we did a little thing with Final Fantasy just because, Final Fantasy's sick as hell. And looking at the games that they're featuring for the crossover with Secret Lair, I mean, it's not necessarily like my cup of tea here. It's like God of War, The Last of Us, Uncharted, Horizon Dawn, and Ghost of Tsushima is like the cards featured. I mean, like God of War is really cool. I necessarily like the newer games compared to the older games. That's just me. And then The Last of Us is, all right. Weird vibe for Magic the Gathering, but that's a sequel that is starting October 27th. That's pretty insane. We're not going to be participating in that because those are relatively very expensive, but I'm sure later on there'll be like, you know, single cards out there that's going to be relatively cheap just based on some stuff. But that's a very expensive hobby that I'm not trying to get into anymore. Now, Borderlands, we played a little bit of it so far. I haven't played much of it with, Silk Song. That's been crazy. But Borderlands has a new Vault character for their DLC that they just teased, which is crazy considering like how soon that game came out. It was like a week or two ago, maybe 3 weeks. So like early September, and we now have the first DLC just like teased, and it's just like, was it supposed to be like a launch character? Could it have been a launch character? I feel like the four-person vibe of launch characters is just. I feel like five launch characters might have been a lot better for this game, considering it's been four characters for the most part in every version of these Borderlands games. But this is like a randomized RNG type character, very claptrap from the uh, pre-sequel type vibes. Now, something else that's really, really insane is Payday is gone from being probably pretty cheap that you can pay for like 5, 10 bucks maybe on Steam, but apparently they're increasing it to base price along with the monthly subscription, which is insane. It increases the collection. I guess it's like the whole thing as the DLC, the collection and its subscription, which is quite bonkers. I find that to be insane. Now, I liked Payday 2 from what I played. I never played Payday 1, and I hear Payday 3 is not the game. And from what I've seen, it's definitely not an advanced version of it. It does not seem like it in terms of visuals or just how that gameplay kind of style seems. Haven't played it, but just baseline just doesn't seem like the kind of game you would think would be the heist, the big heist game that would be, like Payday. But overall, that's pretty insane. Now we're getting a little bit still into Halloween stuff because it's kind of that time to announce certain Halloween style games, spooky stuff, and Kojima's been doing some stuff with his 10th anniversary on his Kojima Productions company, and he has his game Sysint as well, which is apparently his Xbox. Uh, Actually, it's its own game, like it's his own game that can be multi-plat, not exclusive or anything, and it's Ode, which is the Xbox exclusive one. It's very hard to tell what's going on with those games, but you know, as somebody who's played Death Stranding and is still trying to do the Metal Gear stuff, I've fallen in love with Kojima's games. I kind of like how they're faux, you know, society evolution type stories in terms of our world and the normal world, the video game world. I find that very, very cool that he tries to, have that little line in his storytelling or his world building. And overall, that's relatively it for the main article news. Now, we're going to go and talk a little bit about Sony's state of play because there's only really one thing really even worth mentioning around here, in my opinion, and that's Marvel's Wolverine, which looks insane. It's something that is, I think, wanted a lot by people for Sony fans. I mean, it's a Marvel property in terms of that kind of video game evolution. It's not something I'm excited for. It's definitely going to be fun and cool. Like we've gotten Wolverine games in the past and Marvel games in the past and all that kind of good stuff. I love the Marvel Spider-Man games, but Sony can do better than just we're the console that has superhero headline games and some other stuff, right? Like God of War and Ghost of Tsushima, all kinds of stuff there. But for a Marvel game, it's just not that exciting. But it does look cool. They did do the blood. People have been talking about how the design for the character looks. I mean, I don't necessarily care as long as it, feels like a good version of Wolverine in that world or as a, the play as. I think it's gonna be really fun. And then the second game is Sorrow. So this is a game that has piqued my interest to 110% because it might tie into The King in Yellow by Robert W. Chambers or something. I'm awful with names, but King in Yellow is a short story, very much in certain other media like True Detective, which is insane. And Saros is made by House Marquee, which made Returnal. They made a remarkable game with that one. And so, with Returnal being so good, I'm obligated to play Saros just on the absolute vibe of that entire gameplay and the King in Yellow, which is insane. And then Flight Simulator, Battlefield 6, and the Halloween game. Zero Parades looks insane. This is made by the people that made the amazing Disco Elysium, and I'm 100% excited for this game. That's definitely one that I am getting into 100%. Neo 3, I've never finished Neo 2, and that's pretty sad. But, there's a lot of those action games where it's just like, I don't really think I fell in love with Neo when I first played it. And I dislike Code Vein and been hearing about Crimson Dawn for a long time. Let It Die Inferno does seem pretty cool. And then so does the ChronoScript side-scrolling game, so maybe we'll check those out. I'm tired of seeing Seven Deadly Sins. And, you know, Sony hasn't really done much for their 30th anniversary, really. And it's God of War's 20th anniversary. They got a controller. That's pretty much it for the Sony State of Play. Now, there was like an Xbox showcase. I think there was like some more stuff, but the Xbox showcase wasn't really anything new. Obviously, Call of Duty, and we have 007 game. Then there's like Ninja Gaiden. But overall, there's not a whole lot of things here except for like the Bruce Lee Hitman crossover, which is insane. That's very funny. That's a very good excuse to go back into Hitman at some point. But yeah, that's relatively it for all these kinds of games. But we're not going to be hearing a lot about certain games until the Game Awards. The Game Awards is going to be a phenomenal, phenomenal time. And then there was apparently a Virtua Fighter showcase around the same time as Tokyo Game Show, I believe. And Max is hurting. There's a uh, not a whole lot of news about that game, and that seems, pretty bad for how long they've been showing off the game and saying what they were going to show off at a big conference and everything. But maybe the evolution of the fighting game series is going to start here in a new way with a point-based fighting game system where you get points based on where and how you hit with certain moves and stuff like that, which might be really, really cool. That's something that I'm really excited for. And so, yeah, for like video game announcements, that's pretty much it. And we can talk a little about Soak Song because I'm about 85% done at 118 hours. I mean, I can't believe how long this game is. I thought it'd be like 50 or 60 hours, like double. It's like way longer than I ever spent on Hollow Knight. Way, way longer. And so, yeah, it's definitely taking up my time. And we're gonna get through Borderlands at some point, but the end of the year, I want to finish Metal Gear, the Metal Gear playthrough, and they're apparently doing the Volume 2 collection. So I feel like we're gonna get the announcement on that at Game Awards, most likely since Delta is already out and stuff. And I will have to pirate it, which would be nice. I don't mind paying for it, but pirating it is just a little more of a hassle with the PS3 emulator and all that nonsense. I don't want to go through all that. And so if I don't finish Metal Gear Solid 3 at some decent time, uh Chronos The New Dawn, that's probably up there for the Halloween game. Just to, get that just done because we gotta play a Halloween game. It's gonna be nice. And we might have an episode where we're going to talk about the King in Yellow. That's going to be insane. And we could spend a little bit of time talking about One Piece 1161. This one has a long title, A Song of Love Bound Under a Hail of Arrows. Yeah, I mean, we're watching the world government just kind of go nuts, at least in the past of the One Piece, like little flashback that we're getting. Nothing new, but like it's definitely cool seeing all these familiar younger pirate stuff doing new cool stuff. And I mean, God Valley is being absolutely bombarded here. Like we don't know what's going to happen to God Valley now, but we know that whatever happens, I think it just becomes the reason for the Revolutionary War, at least unless we already know like a lot about that. But that's just my guess. I don't know a lot about that. I haven't really been caught up on all of the lore here for One Piece. But yeah, otherwise, there's a lot of pirate government revolution stuff that I feel like isn't. entirely brought to our attention yet in terms of One Piece. I think everything else we already know about is like what could happen. I think that maybe the ponteglyphs and with the obviously the devil fruits and Luffy's like uh his gear 5 power, whatever it is called, the god, I forget the name. But other than that, I think we all know the overall state of the world for the most part and where it's probably going to end up going, of course. And the big one that we can talk about is the Alien season 1 show, which was insane. I mean, that was an episode that I did not think, or that was a season that I did not think would be as entertaining and, you know, as enjoyable as it just was. There was a lot of things that I think early on didn't really help to like make us want to watch it more. Mostly like the synth stuff and kind of how the story was told with the ship crashing immediately on the alien Earth version of Earth planet. So everything around like the initial setup of the show I think was choppy, but the delivery from like the characters and how the story kind of flows was actually pretty really enjoyable to watch. I mean, it was something that was a lot more in depth than I kind of thought it would be. Besides the synth child stuff, I thought that like the connection between the cyborg and the other robot was actually really dope. And then you have the CEO, young kid making decisions and just kind of cracking down under pressure. And I did not think he was going to survive to season 2. Like he's at the end of season 1 just talking about it. But yeah, that's insane that he's getting to be brought back because it's going to be pretty fun to see these characters in a new, different setting. Because we're going to be heavily invested with Whalen Yutani now. Like I think that's they're going to be the big company. They're going to take over Progeny. They're going to do some testing on the xenomorphs with the robots, the the Chow robots. They're pretty much going to take over their entire project. And then I think what's going to happen is they're probably going to try and clone the aliens and do secret missions. Because I was upset that we don't have a tease of like an alien getting away. All the aliens are just pretty much under Wendy's control or whatever. That's not too bad. And then there's the missing aliens, which is way more interesting right now. But I feel like without the lack of promise of a proper alien Earth right now, with the like an alien hive and stuff, the perfect like season 1, I think, ending would have been like a xenomorph like getting away in like sewers or something in the city or some nonsense like that, and then just like slowly doing things underground or whatever. But that's just me. But the other aliens, the eyeball, I think the eyeball once it got into the corpse should have swam away in the water. That would have been scary, horrifying, and been a really great cliffhanger of like where it goes, how does it do like that kind of stuff. And there's the plant manta ray thing, which all these things are really cool, like on their own. But when I'm talking Alien Earth, I want to see like all of these creatures roaming around all of Earth constantly causing havoc. Like it's just nothing but mayhem and Weyland Yutani like type corporations trying to do the hive buster type stuff and get them out of there. And yeah, I mean, if I had to rate it, I would give it like a 7 or an 8 just because it was more enjoyable than I thought it was. But felt like the initial setup for it, like it was very choppy, especially with season or episode 5 being the beginning of the show and you already have an idea of how Alien like works. I just feel like episode 5 should have been first. Like it just should have been first from the get-go. It would have been far more entertaining to see how that story just kept on from there. But overall, wasn't too bad. And the next horror thing that I'll probably rip on is The Strangers 2, because I love it. The first Strangers is phenomenal, and I can't believe a sequel is even happening compared to how the first movie's supposed to end. So that's going to be the end of it. Hopefully, we're going to be dealing with a better microphone setting in the future. We'll have to see how that works, but we're definitely still live, which is nice. Anyway, subscribe if you like the videos or any of the things we talk about here, and peace.